we continue to talk about hacks and informal methods. We have standardized methods and regulation for how this should be done and whom you can trust, which test you can trust. So we have Natalia here with us.
Наташа, представитель уже, я не знаю,
Next speaker.
от прошлого не уйдешь, но что ты там?
Я все еще представитель единой биометрической
наш...
системы.
She's still with the unified biometrical system. Yes. So she will talk to us about our local standards for biometry and its testing. Let's say hi to you.
Как уже сказали, меня зовут...
Hi, everybody. As I said, I'm Natalia, and I work with the Unified Biometrical System team for Russia, and we are on the other side of the guys who develop the biometrical algorithms and solutions based on that. We are testing them, and we are implementing that in our system.
На обратную сторону. В прошлом году я уже рассказывала о том, как мы...
Let's have a look at the other side. I told last year how we run the testing for the biometry in Russia.
Есть так называемый класс испытаний. Это...
There's a class of tests called independent test. By independent test, we take the tests that are not that the developer does not participate. The developer just provides their software and he just gets the report from the organization, say some lab. In this case, we can talk about independence because the organization that runs those tests, not a developer, should not be connected with him in any way, shape, or form, and compared to internal.
Нейронка работает, вот как, например, сказали коллеги из Антихлаба, что у них база делится на две такие части. На одной они обучаются, на второй тестируются. Это является внутренними испытаниями. Их считать независимыми нельзя.
We have some internal test features also. We cannot consider them
одно и то же лицо.
to be independent because of the same person being a tester.
Мы собираем несколько вендоров, все, кто заинтересован, и ставим их в одинаковые условия. Одним из обязательных вообще условий, сравнительных вот таких независимых испытаний является то, что все алгоритмы, все решения должны быть равны между собой. Если, например, в процессе испытания какой-то из вендоров спрашивает, а так зачастую бывает, из чего состоит ваша база, какого в ней качества фотографий, какого разрешения, какие углы.
If one of the vendors is asking what your system consists of, this information should not be
где
provided to the developer, because otherwise he will create.
Разработчикам можно ее публиковать там, но она должна быть предоставлена абсолютно всем.
And it should be provided to everyone. Otherwise, you have asymmetrical information in the system.
Важно также обращать внимание, что вы должны подготовить
It's important to pay attention to the fact that you need to prepare clearly understandable criteria and methods of testing.
за рубежом, так как это международные ГОСТы, описано в ГОСТах, как я сказала.
We have international standards.
На которые ссылались коллеги, опять же, это международный ГОСТ в области liveness, третья его часть.
International liveness standard that the colleagues have mentioned are describing how the tests need to be conducted, not only for liveness, but for identification, verification, other systems.
большая сеть ГОСТов.
Accordingly, this is big that tender.
Учесть все те нюансы, которые в них описаны.
You need to take into account.
Соответственно, есть вот такая потребность проводить независимые испытания.
Accordingly, there is a demand for understanding where you are
До
to get
некоторого дня
a solution.
этим занимался NIST. Это, если кто не знает, национальный такой институт
National Institute for Standardization and Technologies was running it in
проводили испытания, как я сказала, с 2017 года в области биометрии, и это
they
такая
were testing the biometry.
проводилась регулярно, на постоянной основе. В ней участвовало огромное количество вендоров, если не ошибаюсь, вот в части верификации.
Many vendors were participating.
На текущий год больше 300 уникальных вендоров
More than 300 unique vendors.
в этих испытаниях. И эта оценка, она широко признавалась в мире. То есть вендоры гордились, это было престижно, это престижно участвовать в этой оценке и находиться в топе. И наши российские вендоры, в том числе и Entech Lab, Vision Labs, 3DV, занимали топовые места в этих испытаниях. Причем NIST проводит испытания не только
That took places in
took
very
lines in those listings,
классических кейсов. Они смотрят и
like in classical cases.
демография,
They look at influence factors such as demography.
например, раса, пол, вот.
They can distinguish between races and genders and ages.
Они тестировали то, как влияет на
At that period, it was relevant. I mean, the COVID period, how people would use their face masks. They also evaluate the quality assessment algorithms. And today, you can also participate in the liveness component with your solution, although the results have not been published yet. Everything was great. However, since 2022, NIST does not accept any applications from Russian vendors. The technology is being developed in Russia. However, there is no independent testing authority, and the possibilities that used to exist cease to exist.
ЦБТ, то есть
However, the CBT operators, operator, which is new NIST, well, since 2022, one of the operator's functions has been technical evaluation for the IT solutions that are used to process such data. The requirements of this technology are articulated in the order of the Ministry of Digital Technology, translating into a number of characteristics. Many people know that biometric features are characterized by error probability, which factors are well described in GOST standards, where the basic key is the probability of errors such as false positive, especially for access purposes and systems where the cost of letting a stranger in is really high. And the probability here is that you decline your existing customer. There are all the requirements articulated in the order. There are also requirements of the probability that the engine fails to respond, in which case the user will be denied of service and will have to be to log in and get an authorization repeatedly. So why do operators do it? Since 2018, the ABS was launched in June. We've been doing tests. We started from the simplest things such as biometric verification, since it was then that the case was launched. One could open an account and get financial services from a bank with which you're not banking. For example, I couldn't step out, I couldn't go anywhere, and there was no bank branch nearby, so I opened an account with EBS, and I liked it. It was really convenient because it did not require any commute. It was user-friendly in terms of interacting with the operator and so forth. Currently, there are 7 test rigs. Some of them are registered as domestic software.
Позволяет нам проводить испытания.
And the software that helps us to do testing. In addition, we have a closed database. When developers of biometric solutions spend resources on database collection to train their solutions, we spend our resources on testing those solutions. What is important is that it's closed database. The vendors don't have access to it. They can't use it for training. They can't do any preliminary testing on it, which puts everyone in the same position. Everyone is on par. Moreover, you can set up your solution specifically for our testing design. We mostly focus on technology testing, which is done in the mode of adjourned tasks, for which you should have your testing facility. Let's assume you have launched your testing engine, and you get a protocol as an output, which allows completing your tests pretty fast. Moreover, you can get comparative results for different algorithms. We don't confine ourselves to just technology testing. We also do script-based testing. We have target test cases or user cases covering the entire journey of your user from initiation to service provision. And we also do negative testing, and we test systems for fraud. We do pre-production testing prior to making a system a production system. We do our script-based testing, but here it's important to understand that there is a trade-off. Those script-based tests cover less than technology tests. If when doing technology testing, you can use a database of dozens of thousands pieces of data, or even more, in this case, the number is smaller because the intention is to test an assumption or hypothesis or idea. Usually, those databases are smaller since those tests, they are limited in terms of time, and there is just no time to cover a lot. Once you've decided to carry out tests, you need to come up with the proper test design. Even test completion is not the most important part of our work. Coming up with a test plan and test design is, in most cases, even more important, because every failure, every mistake, every blunder made at the design phase, your results may fail to be relevant or even erroneous. So your first step is choosing the object for testing. There can be 3 of them: the algorithm, which is the smallest part, the subsystem, for example, where quality assurance meets live system, meets liveness, and you can be rejected at either stage. Should one decline you, the transaction will fail actually. And we do testing end-to-end involving a huge number of algorithms. And for each and every algorithm type, You can have several vendors. You can process biometric data such as facials, hair, and so forth. Once we have decided as to the object, we choose the type of testing. As I said, it can be technology or script-based or pre-production or whatever. And once you've opted for the type, you set up your database requirements. And it should be kept in mind that, like in training, a database is a very important, critical component. In the first place, it should be a representative.
Каким-то демографическим признакам,
It should comply with traits such as facials, hair, and so forth. For instance, if your service is never used by people older than 45, you should not include this age group in your sampling, or this can be a certain ethnic group or gender. Similarly, when we make up a database for our testing, we spend a lot of time on documentation writing to cover the database requirements, its mix, the devices to be involved, the volume, and so on and so forth.
Очень жаркие споры вызывало. Это
This topic has been subject to huge debate in EBS, and even now, not everyone uses the rule of three. This rule of three helps us to identify the minimal probability that we can apply to our samplings. For example, we have 300 unique attempts. And it's important to take into account that when you are conducting tests, you are in no position, or of course, you're in a position to, but it will not be the same as having a sample of 100 people with one unique attempt. So the characteristics that are described in GOS standards provide from the assumption that every attempt is made by a unique person. For example, in attack, if your system is arranged in such a way that one person makes several attempts, those attempts are not unique, and this should be taken into account when calculating your characteristics. For instance, we have 300 unique attempts, and the maximum probability with trusted probability being 300% will be 3 divided by 300. If you look at our graph, and this is just an example, you can see we have graphs. Well, we have this rectangle, and we have a certain curve. The blue one, the blue line, the blue curve, is the algorithm that is not accurate enough for our database. The size of our database is big enough to evaluate the actual accuracy of the curve. But look at the brown one. It looks like this triangle. It means that this database is too small for this algorithm, and its accuracy either equals our maximal trustworthy probability or smaller, but we can't tell you for sure because the database is too small. Otherwise, we need to expand the database. Therefore, at the output, and I mentioned before that these are comparative tests, giving us results for different algorithms, we come up with this table as well as with a graphic representation, which gives rise to the following question: what to look at?
соответствует.
to make your decision. What is relevant and what is not? As I said before, when we do testing, we should rely on very accurately articulated success criteria. What algorithm meets your operational characteristics to be used in the production system? More generally, the success criteria depend on the case or the result which is desirable to the owner of the biometric system. What is more critical, catching potential fraudster? And it's not that critical that the righteous user knocks on the system door for a second time. We usually look at this table, and here what's of interest is the probability of missing or not detecting a fraudster. But we also always look at the probability of authorization being declined. There is also probability that there will be no response at all, which means that we can lose contact. If it's important for you how big your storage is, you can see here the size of the vector to be stored per person. Quite often, we also pay attention to this graphic representation. It makes it easier to understand who meets the requirements and who doesn't. Apart from doing comparison, looking at the nature of these curves, for instance, this one is pretty standard. We can see the point of equal probability error. We can judge on the probability of access denial or service denial. We can also see an error in the vector, or we can identify a specific feature of the algorithm, an intrinsic one. Oh, well, these are the most typical examples. Sometimes those graphs start from 0.0 instead of 1. In many cases, it means that the algorithm can return a result smaller than 0. And the requirement of the speed is between 0 and 1, which means that in this case, it is an error, and usually we return such an algorithm for improvement. There may be more interesting shapes of the curve. It's not a stop factor for us. However, it gives us a reason to ask questions. Some time ago, we got such a graph, which was a result of the fact that in the algorithm there were several merged modules. It happens sometimes that we don't only look at how vendors are distributed in relation to one another, we also look at their behavior in the process of testing. Usually, they go by iterations starting from version 1, then 2, then 3, and so on and so forth for each and every release. And quite often, we see abnormalities where the vendor appears to be good, and then things change, and they become a bad vendor. And it took us some time to sort it out, to decide if the vendor was good or bad and whose blunder was it. In that case, it was the vendor. How to take part in those tests? Well, in fact, we have published everything. You can visit our portal to the documentation tab, and you will find there the requirements of algorithms. We also have an open GitHub page where you'll find our scripts, to check if our APIs are correct. You can also look for loading characteristics of your solution. Once you've loaded your algorithms, once you've run the scripts and everything is okay,
на тестирование.
you send your request for testing.
Куда отправлять
As to how requirements should be sent and where, you will find all this information at our portal, along with methodological recommendation. Once you've sent your application in and we processed it, we make an agreement for testing. You download your algorithm to our FTP and we complete tests. The average term today is 60 business days. Usually, for technology tests, we do it faster. However, there may be bugs or other irregularities identified, so the term may increase. Send in your requests or questions. We are open for discussion. The results of our testing will be made public at our portal. And please keep in mind that such independent testing is something
уровень
that is typical of an algorithm that's already reached a so-called mass level rather than in-house.
прохождение испытаний информационных технологий в ЕБС
Moreover,
для
currently, testing with EBS is a must for the systems designed to process biometric data. So if a system is intended to process biometric data, it should be tested by an EBS operator.
Что появляются какие-то
Well, it's great that standardized solutions are coming, allowing everyone to have their technology tested. Yes, you're looking at me with question mark in your eyes. I am a proponent of this. What interests me most, we all know that certification, standardization, and regulation impose some limits that may deter progress. Prior to switching to the questions, I would like to take advantage of being privileged to be on this stage to ask you, do you have a community of people with who you are playing with all those ideas, those who may say, oh, we're not against that because we don't see it as an impediment for future development. While on the other hand, this other thing may be a bottleneck, keeping us back. This is one of the opinions. It's believed that such regulation may act as an impediment to further development. However, testing of biometric solutions, I don't find it to be a stop factor. We have been discussing it with the vendor community, and we've been in touch with them. And most of my business day, the biggest part of it consists of communication with the vendors. The Ministry of Digital Technology also has council. I don't have their schedule. There is a board represented by experts as well, which means that nobody is keen about killing the market or putting it on hold in Russia. What we do is just an attempt to make sure that it will be done in high quality. Dear friends, you're welcome with your questions.
Про то, что самое клевое приложение биометрии было бы в магазинах алкоголя.
Well, to support this idea, I can say that one of the best implementations of this technology was at liquor stores where sellers, representatives, did not need to ask buyers to produce their photo IDs to prove their age. Look, you look pretty young, but nevertheless, you shouldn't bother. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question.
Когда вы liveness тестируете,
When you go for live testing,
покупаете готовые базы или покупаете базы живые?
your databases, do you buy ready-to-use bases or do you build your own databases? If you do it in-house, how do you do it? Do you have a lab for that, or do you have other resources?
Тут же вопрос, какие вообще, какое количество?
Additionally,
Просто вам вендор дает какой-то API, и вы в автомате...
if my understanding is correct, for technology testing, you rely on the APIs provided by the vendor. How many artifacts do you load into the system for one test, for one run? Moreover, for live testing, you should use both live people and artifacts. If my understanding is correct, you don't only rely on screenshots or images.
Такой набор вопросов.
This is what interests me. Thank you very much for your question. It's a really good question. We've been considering coming up with a kind of collection point at our office, and we have all those tripods, several phone modules and webcams. We have image printouts. We have a database, computerized database with masks, with holes instead of eyes, which scares a lot of people passing by my computer sometimes. The problem is that in-house we're unable to provide the diversity that is necessary. It's not ourselves who build a database. We order it from a company that specializes in attracting people for this purpose. There are quite a few companies doing this work, because there are many people who need it for algorithm development and others. Usually, those databases are built to meet our terms of reference. And we usually write quite a hefty book of terms of reference. Those databases vary in terms of collection conditions. Our cases, user cases, include people getting services on their mobile devices when they're out, in transit, and so forth. And to reproduce those test cases, we outsource them, which allows us to come up with quite diverse database. And this database has fields for devices which are used to take pictures, to reproduce attacks. As to test completion, we usually don't rely on third-party APIs. Usually, the vendors use our algorithms, and we do it all in the closed circuit. Otherwise, our closed database would immediately become open. Everything happens on our internal test rigs, internal servers. When we go for live, when we test verification and authentication, we use two groups. Legitimate users and fraudsters. Or, to compare, live people and artifacts such as masks, images and so forth. We usually rely on two groups. Otherwise, you will never ever be able to measure the probability of an error.
Здравствуйте. Скажите, пожалуйста, есть ли какой-то входной барьер для тех, кто...
Hi, is there any entry barrier for those who want to test their solution? Should it be a major company, or I can launch a startup with my friends and test our solution with you?
То есть у нас
Today, EBS is open for all.
критерия, да, по которому мы...
We don't have any criteria
Единственное, что если безопасники найдут среди вас
for cutoff.
человека с гражданством
It may happen that our security people identify someone with US citizenship in your company. Well, the answer will be negative. Well, otherwise, there are no other constraints.
Возможность делать решения только большим гигантам, но и плацдарм для стартапов.
Oh, well, in fact, it's not only about major companies. Well, your platform, is it only designed for domestic, local developers, or it can also serve overseas companies?
есть в тестировании находятся алгоритмы, которые
We are testing a number of algorithms that belong to foreign companies. But you should understand that we can test any solution. There are limits for its future use in the EBS. There is a register,
входящего в реестр в
and there are certain limits for critical infrastructure systems. As far as the testing proper is concerned, we're open.
Скажите, пожалуйста,
I thank you very much for your presentation.
испытаний является...
You mentioned that independent testing is a must for system certification.
Ну, там, допустим, 930...
Oh, well, will it be enough to just pass, or is it necessary to show a certain result in points? The order 935 of the Ministry of Digital Technology provides that we only do testing, while accreditation, the actual accreditation, is done by the ministry. If a company applies, a company processing biometric data, one of the documents such a company should provide is the protocol of testing. But even without it, you will easily see whether you comply with the requirements of 935 or not.
Основной эксплуататор этих...
My question is, obviously, the main user of those norms are Russian companies, but there are foreign people using those systems and the banks, and they come to Russia to work, for example, and there's no drift in... Is there any drift in data? Can we guarantee that they are just used within specific nationality or language or
у нас
specific country? You're talking about test data, right? Yeah, correct. When we are creating the specification, because we have multinational country and it's growing,
соотношение национальностей в российском
and the amount of nationality is growing, we always
представители всех
look for different nationalities to be represented in the database proportionally. Do you plan to publish the testing result? And if you do, when do you plan to do so? Like, when can we see the report for face recognition? Yeah, we do plan, same as NIST, to publicize the results. We will start with the facial recognition. I think it will be June. Thank you.
Вот в серединке еще есть вопросик.
There is a question from person in the middle.
Под кого можно замаскироваться?
Who is the worst to be recognized? What is the nationality that is being currently recognized with the
Корректно сказать.
least quality? Well, it's a hard question. We are discussing technologies, right? Algorithms are always mistaken. Who make the algorithm mistaken more often? Well, there are algorithms specified for this or that country, like Asian algorithms. They work with Asian people very well. But our algorithms are worth working with them. Same for Africans, for example. But they have their training set designed specifically. So definitely they have their weak point. So this really depends on the targeted market and what they are aimed at working with, what their training data set is consists of.
Каких модальностей? То есть я услышал, что это
What algorithms are you welcoming, and what are the modalities? Liveness and verification based on the face. What else? Well, as part of EBS, we are testing two modalities, face recognition and voice recording, because they are defined in the norms. We can test biometric verification based on face or the voice, and we can test liveness based on the face. Active or passive? Passive.
У нас есть активный liveness в EBS именно.
We have active liveness in EBS. It's being used in the transaction. But we are testing passive mostly because we think that this is the most comfortable option for the users. The user does not have to do anything. And active liveness requires interaction, and people don't always understand the instruction. So they are often mistaken and they get negative results. And the good thing about passive liveness is that no one knows whether it's there or not, what it analyzes, and what is needed to fake it.
по добавлению
Do you have any plans to add modalities like fingerprint or eye retina recognition? Look, yes, we have laws regulating that starting from 2024, EBS can expand list of modalities if the government of Russia decides so.
Мы сейчас смотрим в эту.
And accordingly, we are looking into this area. We even work with a number of vendors who develop their solutions for fingerprints, for eye retina, veins on the palm. But you need to understand that currently EBS cases are mostly
Что мы не можем
oriented at the user devices. And we cannot guarantee that the client will have the palm scanner, for example, or eye retina scanner. They are quite expensive. Quick question. Can you share services that you use for biometric?
Я открывала счет, когда получала ипотеку.
Well, I was opening an account when I was getting a mortgage. I don't like talking to people.
Что еще? Из EBS я eSIM.
What more, I was getting eSIM from Tele2
Удобно теперь вот
using EBS.
То есть я получила себе вторую симку.
I got my second SIM card fast, and you don't need to use physical slot in your phone. So in terms of EBS, I've definitely used all of the services. Have an account in every bank. We have a number of eSIMs, every type of biometry. Not only biometry is registered in the banks, we have self-registration. And I think it's really cool that the developers are using their own product
Понимают, что удобно, что нет, и заинтересованы.
because they understand what is comfortable to use and what is not. Thank you very much. We are out of time, but two best questions. Do we have a T-shirt?
Я забыла остальные, честно говоря.
Well, I forgot some of the questions, but you need to choose.
Мужчина вот в костюме и белой рубашке.
Yeah, there was a guy in a suit and a white shirt. Ah, it has a suit. Good. You'll have to wear a T-shirt. Oh, you need to wear decent clothes to a hacker conference. Look.